Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the BBC's prestigious radio theatre. To say it's a delight to have you here tonight is an absolute understatement. We are truly honoured, and this is bound to be an absolutely memorable evening. My name is Nelson Abbey, and I'm the executive producer of tonight's great Black History Month debate. Obama, job well done. Now, to say this is a critical juncture in Black history is an understatement and a half, and I promise to stop repeating that word. What we're currently living through is a period in Black and global history that will be discussed and picked apart for hundreds, literally hundreds of years to come. If you told any of what we today consider to be the greats, the heroes of Black history, Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Biggie Smalls, somebody must have inserted this, that we would today have a Black president leaving office after 2 terms with pretty much no scandal, 2 terms with no assassination attempt, 2 terms with most of his hair turned grey but still looking quite good. They would not believe it. They wouldn't. In fact, if you said the same thing to this room in 2006, I strongly doubt that most of us would believe it too. So we, the BBC's Black and Asian Forum, could not think of a more befitting subject to address as part of our 2016 Black History Month celebrations than this monumental occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, as I stated earlier on, we have a very special evening set up for you. An evening that I'm sure will be informing, educating, entertaining, and distinctive. That's what we call meeting the license fee objective or so, yeah. We have with us this evening one of Britain's foremost poets and writers to open the proceeding for us with a poem. This man needs zero introduction whatsoever. As a writer, he has won more major awards than we have time to list. He has honorary doctorates from Exeter, Essex, SOAS, Bedfordshire. He's an Oxford Fellow. He's won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, the Guardian Fiction Prize, the Booker Prize, and the Bad Sex and Fiction Award. Don't know why. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great Ben Okri.
Thank you. Sometimes the world is not changed till the right person appears who can change it. But the right person is also, in a way, the right time. For the time and the person have to work together, the secret alchemy. But to change the world is more than changing its laws. Sometimes it is just being a new possibility, a portal through which new fire can enter this world of foolishness and error. They change the world best who change the way people think, for it is our thoughts that make our world. Some think it's our deeds, but deeds are the children of thought. The thought changers are the game changers, are the life changers. We think that achievements are symbols, but symbols are not symbols. Obama is not a mere symbol. Sometimes even a symbol is a sign that we are not dreaming potently enough. A sign that the world is the home of possibility. A sign that our chains are unreal. That we are freer than we know, that we are more powerful than we dare to think. If he is a symbol at all, then he is a symbol of our possible liberation. A symbol also that power in this world cannot do everything. Even Moses could not set his people free. They too had to wander in the wilderness. They too turned against their leaders and their God and had to overcome much in their makeup and their history to arrive at the vision their prophets had long before. Being a Black president is not a magic wand that will make all Black problems disappear. Leaders cannot undo the evils that structural evils make natural in the life of a people. Not just leadership, but structures must change. Structures of thought, structures of dreams, structures of injustice, structures that keep a people imprisoned to the stones and the dust and the ash and the dirt and the dry earth and the dead roads. Always we look to our leaders to change what we ourselves must change with the force of our voices and the force of our souls and the strength of our dreams and the clarity of our visions and the strong work of our hands. Too often we get fixated on symbols. We think fame ought to promote our cause, that presidents ought to change our destinies, that more black faces on television would somehow make life easier and more just for our people. But symbols ought to only be a sign to us that the power is in our hands. Mandela ought to be a sign to us that we cannot be kept down, that we are self-liberating. And Obama ought to be a sign to us that there is no destiny in color. There is only destiny in our will and our dreams, and the storm our no's can unleash and the wonder our yeses can create. But we have to do the work ourselves to change the structures so that we can be free. Freedom is not a color. Freedom is a thought. It is an attitude, a power of spirit, a constant self-definition. And so what Obama did and did not do is neither here nor there in the great measure of things. History knows what he did against the odds. History knows what he could not do. Not that his hands were tied, but that those who resent the liberation of one who ought not to be liberated blocked those doors and those roads and whipped up the sleeping and not so sleeping demons of race hate, twin deity of America. And they turned his yes into a no just so they could say they told us so. Told us that color makes ineffectuality, that color makes destiny. They wanted him to fail so they could prove their case. Can't you see it? But that's what heroes do. They come through in spite of all that blockage and sabotage, all those obstacles thrown in the path of the self-liberated. That way, the symbol would be tainted and would fail to be a beacon and a sign that it is possible to be black and great. Muhammad Ali overcame that tough fate. Mandela transfigured white hate. Obama twice became head of state. I don't trust mirrors. Many of them lie. But we need dreams to show us what we can be and images to show us where we are. Where we are is too nebulous to be defined by class or color or gender or height. We are beyond definition. The state can't measure our true estate. Not the school we attended, nor our parents' name, nor the university we studied at, nor the forms of apprenticeship that life offered can define or measure our measureless possibility. No one can define us except us. From the beginning of time, no such measure was ever made to be part of the immortal shape of things. That's all I want to say. No God, no race, no power, no state, no secret agreement of prejudice can set a seal on what we are or what we can be. For we are made with the force that shapes the stars and galaxies. That's all I want to say. Obama says that too in his own way. So the healthcare is a Republican scare. Taking on the gun lobby isn't an easy hobby. And it seems to be a black male is a high chance of being in jail. Or, in fact, just being black means the police will shoot you in the front or in the back. And while American justice gets fatter, it becomes necessary to say that black lives matter. Hey, I know that all lives count. It's the number of the black dead that mount. He started well in the Middle East till it became a Syrian death feast. He gave black prisoners the largest amnesty since 3 strikes and you're out days of Clinton's dynasty. He tried hard to unravel the gun culture, but to Americans, the gun seemed second nature. What can you do with the Lord's commandment when you've got the Fourth Amendment? Equality runs through American life like a family dysfunctional with strife. This is a country where nothing is free that calls itself the land of opportunity. Against all this, with all the will and feist, what can one man do, even if it's Jesus Christ? He brought to power elegance and grace. He stood within and above race. He couldn't be just a black president, but also for all who lived in the Republic and were resident. To the White House, he brought black nobility and gave ultimate form to upward mobility. He did many things, many good things for climate change and much else beyond this poem's range. He did something special for the American tone, and we'll miss him more when he's gone. Not in our lifetime again will we see the charms of his presidency. Thank you very much.
That was amazing. Thank you very, very much, Ben. You've got to be careful with these Nigerians, man. He was given 5 minutes, but he took 10. And these Nigerians, they're taking over everything. You've got to be really careful. Now for the main event. Our moderator tonight is a highly decorated journalist who knows a thing or two about America, a former Washington and Los Angeles correspondent for the BBC. He's covered every single presidential race since 1996. Dole, Clinton, Gore, Bush, Kerry, Bush, Obama, McCain, Obama, Romney, and he will soon be on the plane to do Washington, on the plane to Washington for Clinton and Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome a man I describe as the Jay-Z of journalism, the great Clive Myrie.
The Jay-Z of journalism. Don't worry, I will not be singing tonight. Thank you very much indeed, Nelson. Good evening and a warm welcome to you all for what I hope will be an illuminating reflection on the legacy of America's first black president. Now, I know where I was on the evening of November the 4th, 2008. I was in the Great Hall at Morehouse College in Atlanta, whose alumni include Martin Luther King, Samuel L. Jackson, and of course, Spike Lee. And I was broadcasting live as the announcement was made that Barack Obama had completed the most difficult job interview on the planet and sealed the deal. Around me, grown men and many women were in tears. My colleague, a good friend of mine at ABC News in America, was broadcasting live, and tears were streaming down his face. Now, I'm not American, but I felt the power and symbolism of that moment. Who couldn't? Because African Americans on that day, at that moment, had completed a long, tortuous journey from the plantation to the presidency, from servitude to superiority. So, 8 years later, as we near the end of his time in the White House, the hope so very real in the hearts of many that 2008 was a new beginning, was it realized? Did Barack Hussein Obama justify the faith placed in him by black Americans? Here's a brief reminder of the last 8 years.
This is an historic moment. The United States of America has elected its first black president.
In churches, in bars, on the streets, Americans have been celebrating this great landmark in the long struggle for civil rights. In Chicago, the veteran black leader Jesse Jackson broke down in tears.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
These letters, I think, do more to keep me in touch with what's happening around the country than just about anything else.
Since I've been president, this is the 4th time we have come together to comfort a grieving community torn apart by mass shootings.
So here's a clip showing the subtle difference between Gordon Brown and Barack Obama. Here they are arriving at number 10, and look at this lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Oh, and here comes the Prime Minister of it. No.
When people say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't mean blue lives don't matter. It just means all lives matter. But right now, the big concern is the fact that the data shows black folks are more vulnerable to these kinds of incidents. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and what we're seeing here, I think, gives you some sense of what the people of Moore and the people of Oklahoma have been dealing with. My main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Professor Gates is already in his house. The police officer comes in. I'm sure there's some exchange of words, but Professor Gates then shows his ID to show that this is his house. And at that point, he gets arrested for disorderly conduct. What I think we know, separate and apart from this incident, is that there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately. It has been an honor and a privilege to work side by side with you to strengthen our democracy. And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
I'm very, very pleased to say we have 4 panels of eminent commentators to debate the Obama legacy, including, I hope, technology willing, God willing, contributions live from the United States. 2 panels will argue the president has delivered for African Americans, and 2 panels will argue he hasn't. You, the audience, will be able to contribute as well. We really want your input. So just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you whenever you feel the need. You're hearing a load of rubbish up here. Get your hand up there and say that's a load of old rubbish. Get involved. We really want your participation as well. Then at the very end, we'll have your public vote as you decide, based on what you've heard, if the Obama presidency did or did not deliver for black people. So, to our first set of panelists to discuss the Obama social and cultural legacy, including crime and punishment and Obama's image in black society. Arguing that he did deliver will be Afua Hirsch, a former barrister, human rights worker, and now social affairs editor for Sky News. Joseph Harker, deputy editor and a columnist for the Guardian newspaper's opinion section. And Eko Ishan, a writer, journalist and broadcaster and former artistic director of the Contemporary Arts in London. Ladies and gentlemen, the first panel. Didn't deliver on social and cultural grounds for African Americans are Dr. Mark Ledwidge, senior lecturer in American politics at Canterbury Christ Church University, Kevin Cobham, a criminal defense lawyer and community activist, and via webcam from New Jersey, Dr. Eddie Glaude, chair of the Center for African American Studies at Princeton University. The panel. And what I'd like to do is ask both sides to give a 2-minute opening statement, setting out their case. So, for the defense, Afua Hirsch.
In The Audacity of Hope, Obama said, "I serve as a blank screen onto which people of all political backgrounds project their visions." And that's, I think, why, in a way, and I can't disagree with Ben Okri, how can I? He's a legend. That's why, in a way, what Ben said is true. What Obama doesn't matter. But on the other hand, it does matter. And as somebody who's projected my hopes, I'll tell you what I see. I see a president who hasn't just delivered for African Americans. When Obama came into office, unemployment was more than 7% and rising. He is for immigrants, for the children of people without papers to protect them from being deported. What he has done, speaking powerfully in need of gun control, something that so many presidents have failed to do in appointing judges from minority backgrounds at so many courts, not least the Supreme Court, where he appointed the first Latina judge. You can't deny that Obama has left a tangible legacy in his policies and accomplishments that will long survive his presidency. There's one area that I want to focus on because I think it is so important. In fact, I would go so far as to say I think it is one of the gravest injustices in the Western world, and that is the mass incarceration of Americans, especially African Americans. It's what one academic, I'm sure many of you know, Michelle Alexander, has called the new Jim Crow. And for those of you who've seen the brilliant documentary, The 13th, you'll be familiar with the statistic that America has 5% of the world's population and almost 25% of the world's prisoners. It's an absolutely staggering statistic. And the charge has been leveled at Obama that this is one of the areas in which he has failed America. We need to be real here. Only 10% of the 2.2 million Americans in jail are in state jails, and they're in state jails in a country which has been characterized by unequal justice and institutionalized racism from its very inception. This is not something that one president can change in 2 terms. But he has clearly and unambiguously set out the need to shrink the prison population. He has backed progressive suggestions, including one which I personally think is powerful and true, that raising the minimum wage would do more to reduce crime in America than mass incarceration ever could. There are disappointments, of course, the number of killings at the hands of law enforcement that has forced African Americans to rise up in the Black Lives Matter movement. But I think that we need to be realistic about what a president, the executive of this country, can achieve. He is the executive in a federal democracy. It's not a dictatorship, and he's not a dictator, and nor is he the Messiah. He's been stifled by a Congress and a House of Representatives that has gone to extraordinary lengths to frustrate him at every available opportunity. The fact that he's been able to push through reforms like Obamacare, like immigration measures, in spite of this resistance, I think deserves true credit. I'm going to wrap up by... I'm not Nigerian. I'm not Nigerian, so I can run late at will. I'm going to wrap up just by saying something about the fact that I believe that American masculinity, and especially white masculinity, is in crisis. And to prove this, I only need to point to the fact that America has seen fit to nominate a presidential candidate who has bragged publicly about the size of his penis and the fact that he has violated women. And I think in the face of that, this sheds Obama in a new light, even to some of his harshest critics. Here is a man who has never once acted without dignity and integrity in public. And in doing so, I think he has redefined Black masculinity to the world as a powerful statesman who is compassionate, who is a husband and a father. Right. And that, to me, has exceeded my expectations.
Okay, arguing against the president's legacy, Eddie Glaude in New Jersey. Eddie, over to you.
Well, it's a delight to be here with you. Let me just get to it. We do not want to deny the significance of Barack Obama's presidency. I think symbolically, it has mattered that the United States, a country whose history is rooted in settler colonialism and white supremacy, that we've elected a Black president. That's historic. And we do not want to deny that President Obama's achievements around the edges of the neoliberal regime that has dominated this country and the world. We don't want to deny that that's significant. But he has done little, if anything, to change the fundamental frame that sustains racial equity in this country. So in our view, he has failed Black America. Now, what do we know at the dusk of the Obama presidency? Black unemployment is twice that of white unemployment. 27.2% of African Americans live below the poverty level. 40% of our children live under the poverty level. In my home state of Mississippi, over 50% of Black children are growing up in poverty. African Americans earn 75% of the median hourly earnings of non-Hispanic whites. The 2016 home ownership rate for Blacks is lower than the national home ownership rate during the Great Depression years of the 1930s. All the while, the police keep killing us. Let me call the roll. Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Jonathan Crawford, Eric Garner, Rakia Boyd, Tanisha Anderson, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Ezell Floyd, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Walter Scott, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Terrence Crutcher, and just the other day, Deborah Danner, a 66-year-old black woman with mental health issues, was killed by the New York police. And it has been extraordinarily difficult, I think, to get the president to move in the face of this crisis. He has repeatedly declared that he is the president of all America. That has not been his response to the LGBTQ community in the United States. It wasn't his response when he signed the Lilly Ledbetter bill. And ironically, it wasn't his response when he proposed his My Brother's Keepers initiative, a private-public partnership centered around mentoring, a Band-Aid, in my view, for a gunshot wound, right? I think it's ironic that it's acceptable to propose a targeted program for mentoring black boys and men, but unacceptable to propose a targeted program for black people around unemployment. And to my mind, singing Al Green at the Apollo or Amazing Grace at St. Emmanuel in Charleston isn't sufficient. A cultural performance of blackness only serves as a fog to obscure the material reality of black life in this country. People can smile about that performance, and they can celebrate the fact that we have a black family in the White House, or laud the president as a role model for young people. But the fact remains, and it is undeniable in its implication, that his presidency has occasioned a deepening of racial inequality in this country, not to mention he's the drone president. I can go on and on, but I won't do that. I don't have time. Likable though the president may be, one might think of him as something akin to Herman Melville's Confidence Man, selling the snake oil of hope and change. He was supposed to be different. He isn't. He is a neoliberal to the core, and neoliberalism traffics in the cultural goods of multiculturalism while deepening material inequality. So we will demonstrate President Obama has failed to deliver for Black America in that he has failed to address the fundamentals that sustain enduring racial inequality. Indeed, the fact of his presidency has given that inequality new life.
Okay.
Thank you.
Eddie Glaude. Joseph Harker, to his credit, in 2010, the Fair Sentencing Act was passed, reducing disparities in punishment for the possession of crack and powder cocaine. If you were done for crack, you went to jail for longer, a bias against black people, clearly. So things changed. But the new law wasn't applied retroactively. So thousands of mainly black men remained behind bars when they could have been given clemency by the president. How do you explain that behavior? Wasn't he more worried about white opinion than black justice?
Let's not forget the fact that the US is a white majority country, first of all. And Eddie has a great list of problems in which African Americans face: unemployment, housing, poorer earnings. But does he think that Barack Obama is a magician, that he can come and wave his wand and solve all of these in 8 years? I mean, this is just ludicrous. He was elected by a majority white population. He wasn't elected to represent Black America. He was elected to represent all of America. And even that, he started out trying to meet with his Republican opponents, and he was just met with a complete brick wall. In a way, the most important moment in Obama's presidency was that video you saw earlier with the arrest of Henry Louis Gates, the black professor, on his own doorstep. Obama, that was after just a few months of Obama's presidency, defended Henry Louis Gates against the police. He saw a black man being harassed. He knew exactly the kind of trope that was. He knew exactly the situation. And he got completely fleeced for it. He got completely condemned for it by the media, by white America. And in a way, that moment changed the perception of Obama from being a president for all America to being a president for Black America. After that, we saw the rise of the Tea Party movement. We saw the rise of that angry white redneck who hated Obama.
Why should he have behaved like a black president and not simply a president who just happens to be black? There's a distinction there, isn't there?
Yes, sir. So, first of all, I'm here to talk about what I think is a historical juncture in our history that requires very deep and clear analysis. Now, I'm a political scientist, so African Americans voted for Barack Obama to the 95th percentile. So if we take race out of the equation, just for the sake of it, you as a politician are supposed to deliver for your core constituency. So if the constituency votes for you to the 95th percentile, then you are supposed to deliver things to them directly. So two things here. Number one, the American political system is an institution, the presidency. So the discussion about it being ludicrous, I understand that because there are clearly structural constraints. However, within that, you have to look at the role of the president and the role of a politician. And as I've stated very clearly, he needed to directly address issues for African Americans in the way that he'd addressed issues for other groups.
But does that mean then that Hillary Clinton is completely and utterly screwed? Because she will get well over 90% of the African American vote, and she will get a vast majority of the female vote as well. Is she supposed to simply target those two constituencies?
No, this is the key thing that we have to remember. The issue here is one of, if you want to look at the Obama issue, the problem with Obama was that he needed to get in for a second term. Every politician wants to get in for a second term. So clearly, if he had delivered to African Americans, he would have risked the idea of getting in again. However, you have to have the political courage to do something for those people that voted for you. So for me, Barack Obama ran a race-neutral race. In 2008, he was race neutral. He took the Douglas Wilder approach. He didn't execute any policies that were directly geared to the interests of African Americans. And interestingly, both Clinton and Bush appointed more African Americans to the presidency than Obama did.
Okay, let's drill into that a little bit. Echo, if I could turn to you and the question of identity for Barack Obama and suggestions that, frankly, on the inside, he's not really black, right? The American philosopher Cornel West, we all know him. He's written that as a young brother who grows up in a white context, white mother and grandparents, elite schools and colleges, but having a brilliant African father, Obama's always had to fear being a white man in black skin. All he has known culturally is white. So the implication for West is that on a deeper fundamental level, Obama cannot identify with African Americans, and that's informed his policies towards them, potentially. There could be a ring of truth.
There's no ring of truth in that. I mean, Cornel West is a brilliant academic, but really it's a cheap shot, and it's actually a fairly ignorant point. Ignorant in the idea that race and our experience of race and our experience of difference is defined exclusively by phenotype, by skin color. Our experience of race, and I would say this for most people in this room, is determined by our lived experience, is determined by the history that we grow up with, is determined by the history of our forebears, is determined by all of these factors that in many ways are beyond our control, but become the experience that we inherit as black people in this country. You can say, well, Obama's half white, therefore not truly black, but actually most of our racial experience is the things that are visited upon us by a white society around us. We're reminded every day that we're black in different ways. We're scorned, we're humiliated in all sorts of different ways. And our answer is to think about how we can comport ourselves, how we can define ourselves, how we can assert ourselves in ways that are significant for us, but also, hopefully, significant for other people. And that's where Obama delivers. You know, there are all sorts of criticisms one can make, cautious politician and so on, but the thing I would absolutely hold fast to take Afra's point, is that here is a man determined who's represented an idea of what blackness, what black maleness can be, and has represented that to the world, not just Americans, not just African Americans, but to the world in, I would say, historic terms, in ways that no one has managed to do before because no one has been in that position before. And I think the intelligence, the eloquence, the grace, the humility, openness, all of these things that he exemplifies, I think have changed significantly how we understand some of the ways that black people can be understood on a big stage.
All right, Kevin Cobham, did Barack Obama have a problem with black people?
I think all black people, to a lesser or greater extent, if we follow the teachings of Frantz Fanon have a problem with black people. Anti-blackness structures this world. Blackness was created on the holding forts, the slave holding forts on the west coast of Africa, and in the hold of the slave ships. That's what created blackness. And it's right, therefore, is it not, that there should be a problem with blackness. So yes, I would say yes, certainly.
But it's natural, you'll say?
It's not natural. It's not natural like rain, mountains, water. So no, it's not natural. It's socially produced. But to answer the question more specifically, we have to remember what Obama, what his theme was when he was elected. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Well, what are we saying yes to? Who is the we? And what is that which can be done? And as with many fatuous sayings which are said so that you can get votes, when you break it down, he was saying nothing about nothing apart from being the blackface of one of the two corporate entities which run for executive office in the United States. Full stop, or period, as our cousins in the United States might say. So from that point of view, he never was us. He never intended to be us. He never promised that he was going to be us. And we cannot identify today one significantly pro-black program which we can say as black people, Obama, you said you were going to do that for us and you never did it. And the election of Obama by 95% of African Americans reflects for me the hopelessness of this anti-black structure of capitalism within which we live. The absolute degrading hopelessness of it. 8 years after, let's call him what he is, he's the deporter-in-chief. He's an African who bombed Africa. He's an African who has said nothing about the structural violence of the United States, which means that African Americans are killed on the streets, and that violence is the normality by which the rest of the society knows themselves. He says nothing about that. And if he were to say something about that, and if his backers in Goldman Sachs and whoever back in 2006 thought he might say something about that, he would not have been the President of the United States. So we have to move the argument away from simply talking about voting or not voting. I have been identified on this panel as a Obama skeptic. I think that's unfair, because that suggests I've got something good to say about Obama.
All right, okay, on that note, zip it. Right. Now, I want to hear from some of you guys in the audience. This has been fascinating. We've only been going for like, what, 20 minutes or something? And it's been brilliant so far. I want some questions. I want some hands up. Come on now. Down the front there.
What responsibility, therefore, does a community have on the basis that you cannot save a people who will not be able to save themselves? And any of you who's been to the States and met the family of Trayvon Martin and all the people that were killed, how many middle-class African Americans did you find on the streets protesting? Remember that. So I ask that question rhetorically. How can any man, African or not, save a people who themselves will not wish to be saved or are not ready to be saved?
Part of the problem is this. When Obama got in, I cried. But the reason why I cried was for my people, because I knew what it meant to black people and people of African descent all around the world. It meant something to me personally that I saw Obama get to that position. I don't have any problem with Obama. However, at the meeting that Travis Smiley put together in 2010, there was a discussion about the presidency of Obama. And one of the things that came out was our ignorance of the United States. Now, I will. For institutional reasons, one man cannot change it. So, first of all, black people have a messiah complex. They're looking for the individual. Consequently, no. You see, the reason why you're all laughing is you're not even letting me finish. You think, well, he needs to let me finish.
We'll bring Eddie.
He needs to let me finish.
Yeah.
Because this is the point I'm making. I'm directly addressing that question. That doesn't relieve him from the responsibility of doing his best to protect the interests of those people that voted for him. That is there solidly. Hold on, brother. Just let me finish. Let me finish my point.
The question has to be answered.
Yeah, that's fine. But can we do away with this idea that because 95% of African Americans voted for him, that's his core constituency, and it's his duty to respond exclusively to them? It doesn't work that way.
That's not what I said, sir.
Of a whole country.
See, if you can't respect what somebody's going to say, if you can't maintain your discipline to listen to what someone's going to say, then you have a problem.
He is very disciplined. You have got 30 seconds to finish your point.
Thank you. That's fine. So the point I'm trying to make is that the idea that one person can change everything is incorrect. And I agree with that, whoever says it. However, the problem for African Americans is that since the 1960s, the civil rights integrationists took on the idea that actually what we needed to do was to put forward politicians. Malcolm X had already said prior to his assassination that you will never have political power in America if you attempt to run it through the arena of politics by itself.
All right.
It's an impossibility.
Okay, I'm gonna bring in Eddie because he almost fell off his chair there. Eddie, very briefly, Eddie, please respond to what you've just been hearing.
So a couple of things. One is that we need to the questioner, it's very clear that there has been serious organizing across the country since Barack Obama has been elected. He has been moved on the question of criminal justice by Black Lives Matter, by organizers in the street. So it's not as if African Americans voted in this black man, viewed him as a messiah, that he would be the savior of black folk. I think that's just a caricature of the black electorate. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the idea that 95% of black people voted for Barack Obama with the expectation that he would deliver in some way policy to black people is not unreasonable. That's how we understand interest-based politics. So when you have women organizing around equal pay, you don't hear the same complaint. When you have LGBTQ community organizing around anti-discrimination law, right? The House Bill 1523 in Mississippi, you don't have people saying, I'm the president of all America. No one asked you whether or not you're the president of Black America, of all America. Someone's asking him as a constituency that voted for him at 95% to speak to the condition. Now, what I laid out is clear. That it is clear by almost every relevant statistical measure, Barack Obama's presidency has not changed racial inequality in this country. The expectation is that he couldn't do it in 8 years, but he could at least address it.
That's right.
And so the fact that data suggests that he hasn't, and folks are still running around trying to defend him, I wonder if you defended George Bush in the same way by pointing to the limits of the American presidency. Of course you did.
All right, Eddie.
You held him accountable.
Okay, Eddie, I'm just going to quick come in there. We really want to hear from the audience as well. Any questions in the audience? You, sir, at the front.
A comment rather than a question.
Okay. And make it brief, please. I'll try. You're not from Nigeria, right?
I am. Anyway, I'll get back to the theme.
Okay.
I have a lot of sympathy with Kevin's argument, especially as he touched on Africa. The two books that Obama wrote when he came in.
That's right.
I forget which one. I was full of hope that at long last we will have somebody in a position to make a change, and a significant change, as far as the direction of politics in Africa is concerned. In the book, he demonstrated a core understanding
That's right.
of the nonsense of the borders, the makeup of the states of Africa. and the roots of the problem. I was hoping, somebody was saying that one man can't change the character of America. But one president of America did change the shape of the world.
All right.
That was let me land, it's an important point.
Okay.
Is that this was the 32nd president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was the one, the Atlantic Charter, that forced the decolonization of the whole of Africa.
All right, I'm going to have to...
Obama had an opportunity to make a change.
Please.
I'm a Nigerian. Turn the microphone on.
Yeah, someone just switch. Okay, and I want to get one more question at least from the audience. Any other hands there? Sir, you. And it's a question, please, and keep it brief.
I will do. I'm Ghanaian.
Okay.
The gentleman in America points to statistics that haven't changed under the Obama administration.
Yeah.
Can you enlighten us on what those statistics are?
Okay. Let me try and do that. Afua, I want to bring you. Let me try and do that. Afua, I want to bring you in here. The U.S. Justice Department figured for 2014, 37% of prison inmates are African American, yet just 12 to 13% of the American population black. If you're black, you stand a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison at some point in your life. You're a lawyer. That's embarrassing after 8 years of a black president, isn't it?
You know, I'm actually grateful to our opponents on the other panel for really making this case for us, because they pointed out that we're dealing with deeply ingrained, historic, structural inequality that is intrinsically linked to the capitalist system on which America is founded. Now, I think they acknowledge, and I'm sure everyone here does, that a president in 8 years cannot radically alter the economic base, the ideological foundation, and the socioeconomic structure of America. We all know America's history and the fact that black poverty, black incarceration, injustice against African Americans is a direct legacy of slavery and sharecropping that came after it, and the Great Migration, and a series of unjust policies ever since. Now, I agree. I hoped, as many people did, that a president could do more to reverse that historic injustice. But I think we also need to be realistic. He's not Malcolm X. He's not Frantz Fanon. He is the executive of America, and America is founded on those principles. And I think maybe the lesson that we can all take from this is that if we are looking for somebody who can turn the fate of African Americans around, it is not going to come from the White House.
It's not a black president who's let down black people. It's a completely and utterly useless Congress.
I'm grateful for being able to take the mic again. I have to say that we have to get beyond the limitations of the white political and psychological imagination. I imagine myself as a lawyer, I'm a criminal lawyer, I imagine myself as a movement lawyer, and movements for black African emancipation are movements to put an end to anti-blackness. And so if there are movements to put an end to anti-blackness, there are going to be limits to talking about these structures, Congress, etc., which were formed. How were they formed? They were formed at a time when United States society said all men are created equal. And as that was being written, all men are created equal. No mention of women. All men are created equal. As that was being written, outside in the field were my ancestors being raped, enslaved, and on plantations, making the wealth which allowed the person to be in the plantation. We have to ask ourselves, to what extent has that structure really changed? And if we answer the question and we look at the structure of racial capitalism, my view as an Afro-pessimist, and those of you who are interested to understand where my stimulus for ideas come from, aside from Fanon, is from conceptualizations of this world, which says this: the promises of bourgeois society, civil society, in terms of justice, resolution of social problems, they are predicated on black social death. They are predicated on the impossibility of our emancipation within the structures which the rest of the panel want to keep arguments. One final point. A revolution a hero of mine who I have learned a lot from in terms of his reading and his praxis, somebody called Amilcar Cabral. And this is what Amilcar Cabral said about Obama. Amilcar Cabral passed away, was murdered in the early 1970s. But this talks about the structural appearance of Obama. Is it long? No.
Good.
He said, there are those forces, politicians or cultural forces, which are used to harmonize the economic and political domination of the people with their cultural personality. Obama appeared, why? To harmonize their economic and political domination with their cultural personality. Hey guys, I'm a black man too.
Okay, Joseph Harkin. Just respond to that, please.
Can I just respond first of all to the Nigerian gentleman at the front? You mentioned that you were full of hope, and it's not surprising you were full of hope in 2008. It was a historic moment. But if we really were full of hope, then we were just deluding ourselves. If we really felt that one man could change everything, then we are ourselves the people who are at fault, not Obama. But we're talking about a whole list of things that haven't changed in 8 years, like as if these things can turn around that quickly. I think we'll see the Obama legacy in the long term. It won't be now in these 8 years. And if I could just mention 2 words, Margaret Thatcher. Now, what did Margaret Thatcher do for women while she was in office? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But what did she do for women? Absolutely everything. What changed? The whole perception of women changed. From the 1970s, she was this kind of high-pitched woman. No one ever felt that a woman could run the country.
Obama to Margaret Thatcher, are you, Joseph?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that what the impact of Thatcher changed the perception of women in the world, not just in Britain, but in the world, and that has opened the door. Whether we like Thatcher or not, that has opened. I'm no Thatcherite. I was on the picket lines, Cole, not Dole, but that opened the doors to so many women around the world because it changed the image of women as capable people who could work at the highest levels. The legacy of Obama will be that image, that idea of black people being capable of operating at the highest levels. That will open the door to it was probably a bit too late for myself, but it'll open the door to young people like yourselves, right, who will benefit from the Obama effect for decades to come.
Okay,
that was his real legacy.
Okay, let's go back to America. Eddie Glaude. Eddie,
it's a hard conversation. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we haven't even mentioned, we're almost at the end of the first section here, we haven't even mentioned the Affordable Care Act. That could well have sunk his presidency, Eddie, you know that, derailed his chance of a second term, and he lost a considerable amount of influence and goodwill in Congress. But he pushed it through. 3 million more African Americans have health coverage. Nixon didn't do that. Bill Clinton couldn't do that. And trust me, they tried. You know they tried. Obamacare is the single biggest contribution to the well-being of African Americans, potentially since the abolition of slavery. Gotcha.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, we already know that there are really serious problems with Obamacare. Bill Clinton perhaps inadvertently disclosed as clearly as possible some of the problems with Obamacare. Obamacare was really just simply the Republican plan of Mitt Romney and Massachusetts writ large. And most progressives in this country actually insisted that single payer would do more for African Americans, for the most vulnerable. But Obama wouldn't even let that get on the table. And see, this is the key. Let me be very clear here. I'm still stuck on the Thatcher thing. Right? But no one expected Barack Obama to be a savior. But what has been revealed over the last 8 years is that he is just a neoliberal centrist right Democrat in blackface. So none of the fundamental frame that has been at the heart of the dispossession of the most vulnerable in this country hasn't been changed. at all. So listen to what he says in The Audacity of Hope. I believe in the free market, competition and entrepreneurship, and think no small number of government programs don't work as advertised. I wish the country had fewer lawyers and more engineers. I think America has been more often a force for good than for ill in the world. I carry few illusions about our enemies and revere the courage and competence of our military. I reject the politics that is based solely on racial identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, or victimhood in general. I think much of what ails the inner city involves a breakdown in culture that will not be cured by money alone, and that our values and spiritual life matter at least as much. Barack Obama is a neoliberal. And what we have seen over the last 8 years is evidence of that fact. And the fact that he's black doesn't change that. The fact that Hillary Clinton is a woman doesn't change that. The economic frame is devastating the most vulnerable in this country and around the world, and we need to understand that for what it is.
Okay. That was pretty forthright stuff. Neoliberal, echo here. That was pretty forthright stuff. Neoliberal, centrist, black Democrat in blackface.
See, look, the central point that has been put by our friends across the table here is that Obama has made no difference to the lives of black people and you know, may as well not exist and so on. I would say you have to go and ask some of those black people. If you're a young black person, and if you're young and black and gay in America, I feel your lives will have been transformed by the Equal Marriage Act. If you are young or old and black in the South of America, your lives may have been changed somewhat when you see the Confederate flag coming down, and final opposition, and final consensus that that flag cannot stand anymore in America. If you're young and black and trans, your lives may have been changed by Obama's interventions around that. If you're young and black and a girl growing up and looking at the example of Michelle Obama, Barack Obama's wife, and seeing here a model of a strong, eloquent, forceful black woman, your lives and your future opportunities may change that way. Of a strong, eloquent, forceful black woman, your lives and your future opportunities may change that way. And what is false?
Okay, Mark.
So,
very, very brief, Mark, and then I want to finish with Apple at the end.
No problem. For clarity, I've never said that Obama didn't make a difference. He has made.
You said that. We heard you. You said exactly that. I heard you say that.
Okay. For clarity, I never said that
Let's
Obama...
be clear, as Mr. Obama would himself say. Let's be clear.
For clarity, I never said that... For clarity, I never said that Obama didn't make a difference. And if I had said it, it's fine. But I didn't say that. He has made a difference. So, hold on.
Okay, so briefly, go on.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the point. The problem is the proposition that Obama came in as a black president or an African-American president. Obama came in as a politician. The point I was trying to make earlier, because you can't soundbite this stuff, the point I was trying to make earlier was that while he was running for president in 2008 and in the next presidential election, he never he had an intention. I've looked at the personal papers of Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, and various people, and in those papers you can see what their true intention was. Until you look at his papers, then all you're doing is guessing. He never took the job as a black president. I agree with our friend in America in this respect, that Obama is an elite. He became part of the elite. He ran as an elite, and if he wasn't running as an elite, he wouldn't have got in. So consequently, what Obama did was to maintain, in terms of foreign policy, he maintained the basic theme that Bush brought in, and in terms of his domestic policies, he didn't really make.
I want to say that the idea that Obama is not a proper black person is offensive. The mention of him in blackface, that because he has a white parent, he has lived the black experience. He has spoken about blackness. His wife has spoken about getting up every day in a house that slaves built. It is completely unprecedented for a leader of the free world to acknowledge the depths of slavery and the pain and trauma that African Americans face. And that brings me to my final point. Let's remember where we are here. This is America. America is in a place where just acknowledging that slavery existed, of a class anti-capitalist revolution. We're in America. We need to acknowledge where we are. And in that context, a strong black man who acknowledges his blackness, who serves as a symbol of what black people can achieve, who has pushed relentlessly through the measures he could that have made a real difference, that is a change. That is something we should celebrate.
Okay, Afua, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm exhausted. Afua, Eddie, Echo, Joseph, Mark, Kevin, thank you all so much. Looking at Obama's legacy on social cultural issues. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel. Now, before I introduce our next set of commentators to discuss Barack Obama's political and economic legacy, here's another short video by the young people of London 360 on Barack Obama.
Barack Obama will be the next president of the United States.
Yes, we can. It was sung by immigrants. Struck out at the shore, pioneers who pushed westward. Baby, don't you want to go?
And people hate you, and why they supposed to love you, and God is love.
That's what I'm talking about. The Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home.
When 9/11 happened, when Hurricane Andrew struck, they waived the Stafford Act. Tells me that somehow the people down in New Orleans, they don't care about as much.
Mother Emanuel is, in fact, more than a church. This is a church that was burned to the ground because its worshipers worked to end slavery. Once again, innocent people were killed in part because someone who wanted to inflict harm had no trouble getting their hands on a gun.
That is not a protest. A handful of people taking advantage of the situation for their own purposes, and they need to be treated as criminals.
My whole political career has been based on the idea that we constantly want to include people and not exclude them. How do we bring more and more people into opportunity and success and feeling hopeful about their lives?
And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, everyone, to our reflection on the legacy of Barack Obama. Has he delivered for African Americans? This time around, we're going to be discussing politics and the economy. And we have two panels tonight arguing that the president has left a positive legacy for African Americans. First of all, Eric Vincent Guichard, entrepreneur, businessman, a well-known face on US business affairs. Barbara Ntoumi, Deputy Students' Union President at London Metropolitan University. And Peter Herbert, barrister, political activist and chair of the Society of Black Lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, for President Obama. And arguing that President Obama has failed to deliver for black people economically and in politics is Esther Stanford Horsey, community advocate and radio broadcaster. Kehinde Andrews, associate professor of sociology at Birmingham City University, who's working on a book called The Politics of Black Radicalism. And joining us from the United States, Yvette Carnell, a former Democratic Party congressional aide and writer on politics and cultural issues. Ladies and gentlemen, our panels. I'd like to start with Eric, if I may. The history books will show that, yes, Barack Obama was America's first black president, obviously, but that also, on his watch, African Americans as a group are far worse off now than they were when he came to power. The wealth gap has doubled between whites and blacks, with the average white American now having 22 times more wealth than African Americans. How do you respond to that?
First of all, thanks for having me. I think that the premise is actually wrong, because if you do recall, when Obama was elected in 2008, the economy was in free fall. Bush, essentially, who had inherited a $250 billion surplus from the Clinton administration, turned it into a $240 billion deficit at the very least. Housing ownership, which was hovering around 77% when the Clintons left, was hovering closer to 65% because of the collapse of the housing market. The economy was in trouble. Every single industry was in collapse. The thought that African Americans are worse off now than they were back then is a little bit difficult to agree with. One of the key elements from an economic standpoint is home ownership. Home ownership not only drives the U.S. economy, but it's also the basis of household wealth. From 1993 to 2000, when the Clinton administration was in power, home ownership rose. The wealth effect of that homeowner price appreciation was significant. People were able to use the increased equity in their homes to buy vacations, buy education, and that was quite significant for the black family, because home ownership actually improved. What happened during the mortgage crisis? The most devastated communities were the black community, because they weren't able to rearrange their mortgages in light of the banks that owned those mortgages. They weren't able to have access to the legal system in order to defend their ownership of those assets. And as a result, they basically lost the main engine of security, protection, and wealth. That has changed. Yes, there's still problems within the mortgage industry. Many of the homes, particularly in the South, are still going through workouts. And these are very complicated legal property issues. But on the whole, relative to the benchmark, which is 2008, there's been significant improvement.
All right, okay, if I could come in there. Yvette, I want to bring you in from the States. Congress blocked Obama's jobs bill, didn't they? They blocked serious talk about the deficit. In fact, they've shown, and I quote, unyielding opposition to the president's economic policies. That's the tactic the Republican former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, admitted was being deployed to thwart the White House. Congress has screwed black Americans, not the president.
Well, that's just, and thank you for having me, but that's just not true. The other person, your other guest just spoke about foreclosures. And we're talking about the targeting of African-American people with subprime mortgages. That's what happened in the state. President Obama had a program called HEMP that had $700 million set aside to help people with their mortgages. Black people specifically were targeted by this. Now, what you had with HEMP was you had black people and other people who were poor as well and who got caught up in this. But it only helped 1 million out of the over 10 million people who were in crisis. When you talk about Congress coming in, you have to look at President Obama and historically black colleges. He's the one, even after black people in this country had lost our homes. And when you lose your home in this country, you get a foreclosure on your credit. Then you had President Obama come in and punish those black people and their children by changing PLUS loan guidelines. So you had black kids get kicked out of school. You had historically black colleges lose money. So this idea that's being pushed that what happened was because President Obama was stopped by a Republican Congress is not true. And let's also consider the fact that when President Obama came into office, he had the biggest majority since 1993. He had the biggest Democratic majority, and he didn't do anything with it, especially nothing specifically help African Americans in this country who have a rate of wealth disparity with whites that's like South Africa during apartheid. That's where we are here.
Okay, Barbara and Toomey. I mean, the educational achievement gap between white and black has widened during President Obama's time in office. We all continue to underachieve. He's failed future generations, failed to give them the kind of start that he had.
I don't think that the President of the United States can directly affect the achievement of black people. I think it gives inspiration that he is the President of the United States, but issues like that need to be taken up by local community. And, you know, loads of people talked about hope, and I was in school when Barack Obama was elected and somebody said he was going to get assassinated and I wanted to fight them. So that's where I stood on that particular issue. But I think the thing is, and loads of people said today, you know, we had a Barack Obama slogan, yes, we can. And again, you know, when we look at what Barack Obama stood for, Barack Obama didn't make any specific promises about any specific issue. And I think what we should have done was hold and put a lot more pressure and hope to get things done. And I think that that's the key issue. And I know loads of people have talked about lots of different things about Messiah and saviors and stuff. And, you know, Barack Obama never promised radical reform. He was standing, again, as loads of people said, on a center platform, you know, never did anything about, you know, the Wall Street crisis, etc. He was funded by people from those from those industries. So I think the key issue here is, yes, Barack Obama, for me, as far as I'm concerned, did the best that he could, but we and the movement did not hold him to account and did not put enough pressure on him, did not do enough organizing to get some of the changes they want. And that includes, you know, the underachievement of black people in education.
All right, Esther, the fact is, he inherited an economy on its knees. I mean, there's no question about that, is there? The worst since the Depression. 14 million jobs he's created in the last 6 years. That is on a par with the best performing presidents of recent times. Surely rising tides lift all the boats.
Definitely not. You have to have specific programs for specific groups. And we need to also recognize substantive equality. As African American people, there is no substantive equality. And there were many expectations that were put on Obama to help address that. And he has failed abysmally by trying to appeal to all constituencies whilst doing nothing for specific constituencies. And I feel that there was a watershed moment when Obama was elected, and especially for the African American community, to demand more, as has already been said, and to make more pressure on Barack Obama to actually do more to address the substantive inequality that our people face. But that did not happen. And in fact, what he has done is reinforce this hegemony and this notion that to succeed, that we have to be somehow muted. And I'm really concerned about this notion that he has redefined black masculinity and humanity into what? Somebody who doesn't speak up, somebody who is muted, someone who is incapacitated, almost impotent from actually addressing his people's plight, who are going through a genocide. And this has even been recognized by the United Nations Working Group of experts on people of African descent. So I don't feel we have the luxury of saying, well, he couldn't do much, it was only 8 years. My concern is that we did not hold him to account in the way that we would have held Bush or any other white president to account, and that was a lost opportunity.
Peter Herbert, it's people like you who fail to hold him to account.
Well, I've been accused of many things, but being American right now, I fight my battles predominantly here. But I think there are lawyers and congressmen and women and the middle class, educated African American community who probably went to sleep on the job. I have sat outside Starbucks in La Brea in LA and heard our African American middle class community discussing exactly what's been discussed here. And the reality is, they recognize the pressure was not put on. And if you remember, in a sense, what happened when Labour got elected here, our communities went to sleep because we expected it would be done for us. And the reality in the States is if you do not hold your people to account in your leadership, you will get what you deserve. So wake up and therefore remember, reality check. Was Dr. King a hero in every community? No, he was not. Was Malcolm X given that widespread support at the time? No, he was not. So therefore, when we have peoples in leadership and positions of power, we often undermine them. We are not there to support them, and we don't get out for them on the street. And therefore, if the parents of Trayvon Martin were here, they will tell you how lonely that job was and that journey was. So please, do not put everything on one man. And yes, he will have imperfections, but so do all of us. And a people are only as good as, a leader is only good as strong as the people he represents, and that is us. So I take ownership for the failures of our people here. I take ownership to the extent that I can for our leadership in America. But in a sense, if he has failed, then we have failed. So take responsibility.
Kehinde, you're on the other side of the argument. And I wonder what success would have looked like for you if Obama had done his job properly.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that the other side have basically conceded that the American president has absolutely no power. You'd actually wonder, why are we debating this in the first place? I mean, why did he bother running, right? If the president can't do anything, then what was the point? Surely success wouldn't have looked like this. I really want to push back on this idea that he had inherited a bad economy and therefore it's just the economy's fault. Relatively, Black people have done worse in this period than white people. The income gap has got worse during this recession. The wealth gap has got worse during this recession. The poverty rate for African Americans is steeper than it was during the recession. So white people have done better than Black people during this period of time. So you can't just say it's just the recession, everybody was hurting. That's not the case. If you look at evictions, in some parts of America, Detroit, for example, Black women are as likely to be evicted as Black men are to go to prison. This hasn't finished. Foreclosure isn't over. These are still problems which happen. You talk about jobs, 40 million jobs created. What kind of jobs are they? Because 7 million Black African Americans are on food stamps in 2008. 11.5 million African Americans are on food stamps today. 50% of young Black men in America don't have full-time work. You got more work. It's not like in the UK. You've got work, it just doesn't pay, right? So don't tell me that this is success. If this is success, then I don't know what failure would look like. In 8 years, you have got some time to address some of these problems. They have all got worse, and they've all got worse relatively. That is abject failure on every level.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the floor now. Any questions from what you've heard? A lot of interesting stuff there. Gentleman in the middle there. If we could get a mic to him just in the middle there, the black shirt.
Good evening. Yeah, I find what Esther said slightly offensive. I think Barack Obama has given masculinity a very good example. Even just the other day, Vice President Joe Biden was making mention of the comparison that if he was upset as a white man, he would be considered to be, he would be listened to. But as Barack Obama, he faces the fact that he would be considered to be an angry Black man. Similar to Hillary Clinton, he compared Hillary Clinton with Michelle Obama, and how difficult it is to be Black and angry without being seen through a very racist perspective, through a very racist lens. So I think he's given a very moderate, very calm, a very respectable, loving his wife, loving his children. He's done his best to, I think, be a good role model. And I think a lot of this is really connected to the symbolism versus
the substance, which is what the image in your logo displays. I think symbolism-wise, he's been fantastic.
All right, okay. Yvette, thank you for that, sir. Yvette, in America, he's been moderate, he's been calm, he's been respectful, he's a role model. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think he has been those things in terms of symbolism, but I think the value of symbolism is exaggerated. I mean, someone on your panel there, I can't see the panel, but mentioned food stamps, and the number of Black women likely to be evicted. And what we have is Obama signed a bill to cut billions in food stamps. That's the president that we have. You know, so I think when you look at that, I think we do have a problem in terms of the symbolism. And I know we tend to say, well, Obama didn't say he was going to be a radical. Obama didn't say he was going to be that. But we're living in a country where a third of Black kids live in poverty. That's the country that we live in now. And Obama has a bust of Martin Luther King in the White House. Michelle Obama, you know, she talked about the White House being built by slaves. And I am offended as an African American that these people want to traffic on the legacy of slavery and having us been slaves, without actually getting into the crux of doing something for Black people. So you want to tout coming from that legacy where everyone else was amassing wealth while we were in chains. So when you look at that, I don't think there's any question for me. You know, even if you look at the statistics, when you look at Black business, Black people get 1% of the SBA loans, Small Business Administration. Okay, it was 8% under George Bush. So these are things that he could have done singularly to help African Americans. When the foreclosure crisis happened, he could have audited the banks and used that as a tool to kind of screw that nut and ensure that we had great access to capital. It is things like this that we just didn't see. Even with the banks, Bush jailed, like the first George H.W. Bush, he jailed bankers after the S&L crisis. We didn't see any of that in terms of the president.
All right, Yvette, thank you for that. Eric, the fact is, it's an appalling irony, isn't it? Absolutely appalling that a group like Black Lives Matter had to be established while a Black man is in the White House. That is dreadful.
I think you have to understand the political system in the U.S. It is, as the Constitution says, it is run by the people for the people. The individual who is elected president, as someone said in the previous panel, is not a king, is not an emperor, is certainly not a dictator. And individuals within the American political system have to petition their government. And so he could potentially provide hints or provide an incentive for groups to form based on those groups' petition of the government, can then initiate legislation or executive action in response to the people's demands. And that's essentially what they've done. And again, this is a question of form over substance. People talk about the fact that he didn't stand up in the way he did in the Gates situation, where he was relatively new at the game and very emotional, and subsequently got the wrath of the people on that basis. But if you look at what the Justice Department has done since these killings have happened, they have focused on process. They have investigated these local police departments. They have changed the way the process works. That, over the long term, is a solution. It's not a question of grabbing the bully pulpit and insulting the white policeman and expecting that that will make change. It's about process. And it's about, it's not about being public, it's about making change quietly. Some of the things that we're seeing, that we're not seeing now, will actually show up in the next few decades.
Okay. If you could just hang on there, Kehinde, you wanted to comment.
I really wanted to comment. You can't just say it's our fault for not pushing Barack Obama. You can't just say it's the president. This is a president who has the power to drop bombs on little children in other parts of the world. And you're saying, no, he has no power to do anything other than these small process changes. You can't just look at the community and say, well, it's the community's fault because you didn't hold him to account. That's what Black Lives Matter is. It's the realization that a black president did nothing for us and now we have to push him. He must have some responsibility. He worked in Chicago, where all these problems in Chicago, all these problems. Let me finish. He worked in Chicago, the place where you can see all these problems probably better than any other place in America. And he doesn't have any personal responsibility to say, actually, you know what? As a president, I should do one thing.
All right.
One thing.
Barbara, personal responsibility. He has that, doesn't he?
He definitely has personal responsibility. I think that, and again, I'm going to point to the fact on the political landscape of the United States and the platform on which Barack Obama ran for. And I think that Barack Obama has made public statement in favor of Black Lives Matter, and he said, stuff about Trayvon Martin, and yes, the action is lacking. But then again, I'm going to point back to how much are people pushing for the action to happen, because that's also very important. And, we've talked about Congress blocking him, et cetera, and, people argue on both sides. But I think the real issue here is, Black Lives Matter would have happened anyway, I feel, because of the trajectory of the United States is going in. Whether we had a black president or not, the killings of African Americans would have carried on. So Black Lives Matter is probably a manifestation in many black communities of where the struggles are, the fact that people are responding and wanting to make change.
Okay, Esther, very, very briefly respond to that.
No, I don't accept that that's where people are at. I feel that's where we've been hoodwinked, as Malcolm X said decades ago. That is happening again, and that happened big time with Obama. He has had the opportunity to listen. So one of the key demands that is there as a group demand of African people in America, as it is of African people worldwide, is for reparations. There is an organized process that is making very polite demands, I would say, calling for, a presidential commission to study this issue. No action whatsoever. Now, that would be a fantastic legacy. When Obama came in, he spoke about a change. He was going to bring a change, but he has not brought a change that we can believe in. Okay. That is the problem.
All right, okay. Thank you for that, Esther. We're now going to hear closing arguments following our discussion.
Interesting that really, if you listen to the other side, they've kind of made the case for us, right? Limits of the presidency, couldn't really do much for us, have kind of fallen back on the symbols. And if laying the foundation for a black Theresa May is somehow seen as a solution, I don't really know what to say, right? So I actually want to say, if you look at the evidence, you look at the numbers, you look at the statistics, it's very clear black America has not progressed under Obama. So the argument we've presented is a symbolic argument, and I want to kick that at the knees straight away. The symbolism of Obama is actually the most dangerous aspect of him. And I'll tell you exactly why this is. The symbol is the problem because of a speech that he gave at his Democratic National Congress in 2004. He says there's not a black America, there's not a white America, there's not a Latino America. That's factually incorrect. There is a black America where you have higher rates of death, you have higher rates of poverty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is a black America that is hurting. And there is also a white America that is built on top of that black America, right? White America has always benefited from and been and oppressed black America. So if you're the president of the United States of America and not the president of black America, guess what? You are anti-black America. And it is really that simple. So the reason that the symbolism is so dangerous is because he's got everybody what we call American dreaming. He's the president at the top. We can all be part of this society. Maybe there is hope for us, but I'm telling you now there is not. I take my lead from Malcolm X, who told us in 1965, America, you will never have freedom, justice, and equality for the black man in America in the same way that a chicken can never lay a duck egg. It's just not meant to do it. Right? Okay. That's important. It's not meant to do it. The reason that they've accepted the presidency is not meant to help black people. No white president, black president, green president is ever going to deliver for black people because the presidency doesn't deliver for black people. Okay. So this is why the symbolism. I want to end on this. I'll end on this one point. Okay. The symbolism is problematic because what we have with Obama is a black skin in a White House.
Right.
I think the very fact that we are having this debate proves achievement, right? And there's been achievement. I think, again, you have to take the time to look at the evidence. When he arrived in 2008, the economy was in free fall. People were desperate. Hank Paulson was on his knees begging for $800 billion rescue package. Obama stepped into the breach, saved the automobile industry, saved the housing industry, transformed the education industry by going up against the teachers union, by facilitating the creation of charter schools that are predominantly helpful to the inner city. I sit on the board of one. The healthcare, the Affordable Care Act was attempted going back to Theodore Roosevelt. Every single president since Theodore Roosevelt in 1901 failed at passing this bill. Obama achieved that. And that's purely on the economic side. On the political side, it is true that his presence has in fact educated a new crop of African American politicians. He has defined what the playbook is. He has defined how do you use the system in order to push your agenda. Again, it's not about emotion, it's about effectiveness. And I think he's achieved a lot there. The second point here, which is extremely important, is the rule of precedence. In the American system, the very fact that a black president has been elected means that you'll have more black presidents in the future. It's just the way the system works. It worked for Colin Powell. It worked for other politicians. We now have 4 senators, black senators in the U.S. Senate. Before, we only had 1. And before Obama, there was 1, and he was only in passing during Reconstruction. The reality is that on balance, this is extremely important, on balance, benchmark to 2008, Obama has achieved significantly. And on that note, I think that he's done extremely well. Thank you.
Okay. To spasms there in the United States, but I'm afraid we've run out of time, so I'm sorry. Yvette, you have 20 seconds. Respond.
I'm not Nigerian, so I just want to respond to this. That was the thing for the last panel. I just want to respond to this. The charter school thing. Just let me address the charter schools.
Oh.
We've seen studies that show that they disproportionately suspend African American students, especially African American males, and they're a road to the prison pipeline. And we also know that this is just a way to funnel money, public funds, to private people, to private capitalists. This is sort of the con game that black kids have gotten caught up in. So to give Obama any kind of credit for that is problematic.
Okay.
That's the same issue.
Right. Okay. Yvette, Esther, Kehinde, Peter, Eric, Barbara, thank you all so much. Our panel, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is where you take control. You decide the outcome of tonight's debate. You've heard all the arguments. They've been heated. We've seen a couple of coronaries over in the United States. I just want to check that have you all got voting cards, a pink one and a white one, yeah? Everyone's got them? Excellent. Okay, so now you decide. Please, shh. Oh, we're getting some more cards handed out here, actually. Anyone over here who hasn't got a card, voting card? Over here, too, on this side. Ladies and gentlemen, what you need to do is make your decision. And we've got a video that will show you while this is going on.
Today, we asked the London 360 junior reporters whether Obama has been a good president to the black community. Let's go find out.
Barack Obama has started something, I think that's the main thing. He's done for black people what Thatcher did for women. Today we've got a new Prime Minister in power, Theresa May. Yes, she's a woman, but people don't talk about that, they talk about her policies. Black people need the same thing. So Barack Obama's provided this. The next black president will be able to be talked about for his policies rather than his skin colour. I think that's the main thing Barack Obama's done.
Barack Obama has failed black Americans. I hear time and again he's just one man and the power is not all in his hands. Do you need the Congress permission to go to Chicago where the black youths are being slaughtered like chicken?
I will always remember one of Barack Obama's dynamic slogans, "Yes, we can," meaning anything is possible if you're motivated. He grew up a local boy from Chicago and he became the first black president of the United States.
I think Barack Obama has had a positive influence on the black community. This is because recent research shows that black youth unemployment has decreased by 12% from 2009 until 2016.
He plays this race card when it suits him. Being the first black American president was simply not enough.
96% of black Americans voted for Barack Obama. These are the most black votes for the Democratic Party since before 1979. This indicates that black people voted for him purely based on his race. Is it then fair to say that he hasn't lived up to your expectations when you voted him in for the wrong reasons in the first place?
The US has notoriously been known for dealing with a health insurance crisis for years now. In 2014, almost 90% of black Americans were covered by the Obamacare project. This cuts over $600 million from debt projections. The Republicans simply have no answer or alternative for this scheme.
Barack has had to be the captain of a sinking ship, and he's just managed to bring it to its surface.
So, did Barack Obama leave a positive mark?
Or did he fail to deliver to the black community?
The House has decided by a margin of 95 to 82 that Barack Obama has failed to deliver for African Americans as president. Yes, he couldn't. Yes, he didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. It's been an incredible evening. We've heard some amazing debates and discussion on the 44th President of the United States. Thank you all, thank you. And good night. Thanks, man.